Welcome to Delivering Miracles, a podcast to teach women like you tips and strategies on how you can have a safer pregnancy so you can bring home a healthy baby. I'm your host and your high-risk pregnancy expert, Parijat Deshpande. I can't wait to chat with you. Hey, have you checked out my brand new book, Pregnancy Brain, yet? It's all about the mind-body approach to stress management during a high-risk pregnancy specifically. It has stories from my very high-risk pregnancy, tons of client stories, and so much research on the impact of stress on pregnancy and pregnancy complications and how you can have a healthy pregnancy. I would love for you to check it out at pregnancybrainbook.com. That's pregnancybrainbook.com. When was the last time you had a really good cry? And was there anyone around when that happened? I remember way back in the day, like way back in the day, there was a show called Everybody Loves Raymond. I'm pretty sure it's not even running. I don't even know if it's syndicated right now, but it was one of those family sitcom shows. And there was an episode where the wife asked the whole family to ask the guy, Raymond, her husband, to take the whole family out. She just wanted to be alone at home. And he was very curious about what he does or what she does when they're alone. She thought, oh, maybe she takes a nap or she takes a bath or she does this or that, something really fun and exciting. And there's this scene that I'll never forget. I can still picture it. He's peeking in through the window of the house and she's sitting on the sofa, sobbing her eyes out. And naturally, as a husband, as a partner, he's extremely concerned about the fact that she's crying this much. And then also concerned about why did she need to be alone to do that? Right? And I'll never forget that scene because it was something that I could really relate to at a very young age. I think I was maybe in junior high or high school or something at that time, where there are moments when you need a release. You just need to cry. And there's not necessarily anything wrong. There's no real reason for it, but there's been a buildup of life and experiences and things going on that you just need to release. But somewhere along the way in our life, we're all taught that there's something wrong with crying, that it's a sign of something bad. And this is especially true for men, right? Men are taught, and I think a variety of cultures, many cultures around the world, you don't cry. It's what babies do. It's what kids do. It's what girls do. My God, don't even get me started about that. But it's not something that men do. But women are also sent that same message, that crying is a sign of something wrong, that it's like you have too much emotion, you can't handle it, or there's just some judgment around it, even though we all do it, right? And that judgment leads to these crying episodes becoming private. Now, there's nothing wrong with crying privately, right? Sometimes you just need that big, ugly crying. You just don't want to deal with other people knowing what to say or do or dealing with their reaction to that. And there's nothing wrong with that. But what it does do is it stops us from talking about this experience of crying. What does it actually mean? And the reason that I thought about it today is because as the conversation about postpartum depression increases, and there's more and more people coming out about it, there's amazing podcasts and shows and radio shows and blogs and resources on postpartum depression. Tons of celebrities are coming out and talking about it, which is phenomenal. But as we do on this podcast, we talk about the other side of things a lot of people don't talk about, right? And in this case, I want to talk to you about when crying is not a sign of postpartum depression. Because I think what's happening is we're kind of in this gray zone where we're talking a lot about postpartum depression. So hundreds of thousands of women are going, oh, that's what that was. Or, oh, that's what I'm experiencing. And just feeling so grateful that there's finally words to put to it. And then there's another group of women that are going, oh my gosh, so I have postpartum depression? That's what this is? And maybe not out of a place of judgment, maybe just out of like, I didn't think I was depressed. And I want to talk about that experience because there is a form of crying that happens postpartum, especially for women who have a high-risk pregnancy, who've had some kind of birth trauma, who've delivered preterm, who had a baby in the NICU, that at some point postpartum, this crying happens, and it's not necessarily a sign of depression. And that's what I want to talk about today, because crying is a signal about something. It's a signal about what's going on in your body. And understanding how the crying impacts your body actually clues you in on what's going on. And many times it's not a clinical disorder, but actually a sign of healing. A while back, I had the honor of working with a woman after her high-risk pregnancy. She hadn't known about me during her pregnancy, and afterwards, somebody had reached out to her because she had been on hospital bed rest. She experienced PPROM, which is preterm premature rupture of membranes, which is a really long way of saying her water broke before she was ready to have a baby, before labor started, and her water broke before 40 weeks, or before 37, let's say. So it was preterm, and her water broke early in the labor process. So she had her amniotic sac had ruptured early, and she did end up delivering her daughter at 28 weeks. And so a 28-weeker is what they're called in the NICU. They are in the NICU for some time. You know, they are a good 12 weeks from their due date. And so usually the hospital stay is somewhere around 10 to 12 weeks minimum. So she did the whole hospital bed rest thing. She did the whole NICU thing. She came home with the baby. Baby was doing great. And a friend of hers had directed her to postpartum workshop that I had done. It's called Healing from Guilt, Grief, and Trauma Postpartum. And I'll link that in the show notes if you're interested in checking that out. And she joined the workshop. It's an audio workshop, so it's really easy to access wherever you are. If you're holding the baby, if you're rocking the baby, if you're driving, it's just really easy for you to listen to. It's very short. And it really hit home for her. Just the words that we were putting to this experience that happens after a high-risk pregnancy and after preterm delivery, and how the healing process is totally different than after a healthy pregnancy, healthy delivery, and a full-term baby. And so she reached out after that postpartum workshop going, I think I need some help. But the problem was, it's not really a problem. Her concern was, I guess that's a better way to say it. Her concern was she didn't want to spend her time with me crying. She was worried that if we talked about what she went through, she would spend every one of our calls sobbing. And that's actually, I think I've shared this here before. That's something that a lot of my clients, especially my postpartum clients and my healing after loss clients, are scared of. They're scared that if we talk about what happened, they're just going to spend their time crying and they're going to feel miserable. And I say this all the time. And I say this in the workshop as well. When you've been through something like a preterm delivery, high-risk pregnancy, birth trauma, loss, you've already been through enough pain. The healing process should not hurt as much or more than that. It should hurt less, if at all. And my whole philosophy about healing is, until you find safety in your body, you are not ready to do the healing work. And I think that's a huge issue for a lot of these women who go to therapists. And I say this as a former therapist. It is possible to do this work too soon. And the too soon is not based on time. It is based on the ability to achieve safety in your body. If you don't have the safety in your body, it is too soon to do the healing work. And that's why the work that I do, the first half of it, is about establishing safety. It is about trusting your body again. It's about feeling safe in your body again. You'll hear in the workshop how there are some very simple ways to actually do that you can do right now that don't involve anybody else but you starting to reconnect with your body and experience your body physically in a safe way that is not tied to trauma. Because until that safety is established, any work that you try to do to release that trauma, to work through that trauma, whether it's seeing a therapist, seeing another professional like a psychiatrist, journaling, whatever, it is just like taking a scab off of a wound and opening it up again every single time. And that's what leads to constantly crying. That's what leads to that experience that a lot of these clients, a lot of these women don't want. I didn't want it. gosh, let's be real. I did not want to go through that again. Yes, I knew I had to process what I'd been through, but I did not want to be sitting there crying my eyes out days and weeks on end until I felt better. No, thank you. I'd been through enough. Let's do this the right way. So once I explained that philosophy and she really bought into it and she's like, oh yeah, that sounds exactly like what I wanted. We worked together to establish that safety and to have her rebuild trust in her body. And then, and only then, do we talk about what she's been through. And there was one day, partway through the program, when she emailed me and I could, you know how you can tell, usually you can't tell tone in an email, right? And that's where all these miscommunications and mishaps happen, right? Like, oh, are you being sarcastic? Are you being nice? Are you being funny? I don't know. But in this case, you could really, really tell. She was frantic. Okay. It was almost like I could hear the stream of consciousness as she was typing. And she told me something to the effect of, I spent all day crying yesterday and I'm really scared that I have postpartum depression. Do I have it? Do I need to go see a psychiatrist? Do I need to be on medication? She was freaking out about this. Now, on the one hand, I loved that she was open-minded enough to consider that she had postpartum depression. I love that that was part of the conversation, right? Because too many times we push that aside and say, no, it's not that. It can't be that. I'm fine, right? So I love that she came out and said, is that what this is? She was being very proactive about it. Is that what this is? What do I do? Because I just spent all day crying. It's totally not what I wanted. Oh my gosh, what's going on? Now, I don't work as a therapist anymore, but my training in clinical psychology and all the training that I've done and all the experience that I've had as a therapist prior to my pregnancy allows me to be able to spot and identify mental health conditions really early. So even if I can't treat them anymore, I'm able to spot them. I'm able to identify them. I'm able to direct clients in the right direction. So in our next call, we talked it through and I asked her to describe the crying. Okay. Now notice and we talked about this in a couple episodes ago. I asked her to describe what the crying felt like in her body. Now notice I didn't ask her what thoughts she was having because, as I say all the time, you'll hear it on this podcast all the time. You'll read it in my book, Pregnancy Brain, all the time. We can talk ourselves in and out of anything, but our bodies never lie. So how did the crying feel in her body? What was happening in her body as she was crying? How did her body react to the crying? We spent a lot of focus on her physical sensations. And she kept saying there weren't a lot of cohesive words. She was really just kind of identifying feelings, which is completely fine. You don't need to have coherent thoughts to explain this, right? You just need to start getting anchors and feelers of what are the words I would use? What words would I put to this physical sensation? And she kept saying the word release and relief. She described her body like it felt like it was emptying. I can still picture that moment in our call. I do all my calls on video, so I can see my clients, they can see me. And she was sitting there and she had her eyes closed as if she was just really, really focused on her body. She didn't want any other stimuli coming in, no visuals, nothing. She was just super tuned into her body. And she said she could feel her shoulders dropping. She felt lighter, like it was easier to breathe. She's using all of these really positive words. And I said, you know what? This is not postpartum depression. Aside from the fact that you don't really have any of the symptoms other than crying, but the way your body is feeling when you're crying, that's not how it would feel if you're depressed and crying. See, the symptom is exactly the same, right? It's like any kind of health issue, like a fever. You hear about this all the time with fevers. A fever can mean anything. It could be the flu. It could be a cold. It could be chickenpox. It could be anything. The fever, the symptom doesn't really tell you what's happening. The crying doesn't actually tell you what's happening. It's what happens behind the scenes. It's the backdrop on which the crying is happening that really tells us what's going on. And I told her, you're using all these very positive words. You look relaxed as you're talking about this. If you were depressed, you wouldn't be talking like this and you wouldn't be using these words and you wouldn't look like this. And I explained to her that this was healing. This was a moment of healing for her. And it was hard for her to wrap her head around because who wants to spend the whole day crying, right? Your eyes get all puffy and dry. You get a headache from being dehydrated. Your face is all red and doesn't feel great. But what happens on the other side of it? How did her body feel afterwards? And she said something that I'll never forget. She said, I was overcome with gratitude. I get goosebumps just thinking about it. Think about what happens when you release the burden of the trauma you're holding on to, the grief that you're holding on to, the losses that you're holding on to, the anxiety, the worries, the fears. It's like somebody injects your lungs with air. It's like you can float above everything that's going on. You can look at it and you go, oh my gosh, I am so grateful for what I have right now. Now, that's not to say you can't be grateful while you're grieving. We've done plenty of episodes about this. I talk about that all the time. But there's a moment where you can actually see and experience and really feel what is in this moment. Not what you've been through, not what lies ahead, but right now, there's just this feeling of abundance that just washes over you when you can release. And for her, crying was the way to do that. Now, identifying that was step one, right? Recognizing that this is not postpartum depression. This is part of the healing journey. And that while she did spend the whole day crying, it wasn't like a re-traumatizing, oh my gosh, I'm back there again. I can't get out of it. I just don't want to get out of bed. It wasn't that type of crying. It was a cleansing, if you will, right? And so I asked her to ride that wave. I asked her to get into her body. And you can do this too. Get into your body and really notice where you feel that release. She'd already kind of described it. Her shoulders felt lighter and she's breathing easier. So let's go with that, right? Where else? Where is this release showing up for you in your body? Find it. I asked her to do that. And then we went from there to that sense of gratitude that she said she was overcome with. Where is gratitude showing up in your body? How do you feel the effects of that gratitude in your body? It's amazing what happens when you do that, because now the healing is not cemented. It's not in your thoughts. It's not something that you have to remember. And that, later in the day or later that week when you have another bad day, you forget how it goes. And you're like, oh gosh, I really want that feeling back again, but oh well, it's gone. Or oh, that's not going to happen again. And it feels very fleeting when you focus on your thoughts, when you focus on your head. But when you're in your body and you really identify the physical sensations that happen with these emotions, it cements that experience. It's a body memory, just like riding a bike. They say you never forget how to ride a bike. You get on it and eventually your muscles take over. You have this muscle memory of how to pedal and ride a bike and keep yourself from falling off of it. It's the same thing. It's the same thing. You're training your body to remember these emotions. And these emotions that we focus on, in my programs at least, whether it's fertility, pregnancy, or postpartum, or after loss, they're positive emotions. They're safe emotions. And you remember it because you remember how your body felt. You remember where in your body you felt it. And I tell every single one of my clients, if you can feel that way once, you can feel it again. And if you can create that sensation once, you can create it over and over and over, no matter what's going on in your life. It's actually really powerful stuff to see and to witness and to experience personally. And so she rode that wave, if you will. She just allowed herself and allowed her body to embrace the release and to embrace the healing. And it was only possible because she had established safety in her body first. If you do this too soon, if you don't have the safety in your body first, this is going to be triggering. So I don't recommend that you do this until you've established safety first. And if you don't know how to do that, I'm here for you. I'm happy to teach you. But for her, it was just this moment of, wow, of peace. Like, wow, I didn't know I could feel this way again. I never thought I could feel this way again. It's like after a really amazing massage. I'll tell you, actually, recently, I went to get a massage. I had a gift card for a 90-minute Swedish massage. Holy cow, was I excited for this. I can't even tell you. I was so excited. I was thinking about it for like 2 weeks. 90 minutes. I've never had a 90-minute massage. Oh my gosh. I was in there and I actually was convinced that my massage therapist didn't get the memo that it was 90 minutes and she cut corners, or she just kind of sped everything up and it was only 60. I was like, I'm going to have to talk to the manager. I'm going to have to explain this. I already had it for 90 minutes. And I got up at the clock and said it was actually 90 minutes. The time just flew by. I was so convinced it was not 90, but it's actually 90. Anyway, and I highly recommend that you try it. If you've never done it before, I highly recommend it. It's wonderful. So I felt great afterwards, right? My body was relaxed. And everything just felt good. I was happy. I smelled great, right? Everything was great. And then, I get in the car. I'm having this really nice, easy drive home. I just feel nice, And then I get home and we were in the process of selling our house. There's a lot of drama that was going on with that. I get home and my husband has news about the house that was not very good. And immediately I can feel my shoulders tense up and I could feel my back tense up and I could feel my feet get cold. And it's like the effects of the massage were completely gone. And so part of me was like, well, that was an amazing experience, but if it only lasts like 40 minutes, what's the point? What's the point? And that's why I do the work I do with my clients here. And I do this with myself. I started doing it during my pregnancy and I've kind of fine-tuned the process along the way over the years. Is I don't want you to be dependent on something outside of you. If you need outside support, totally fine. I still do get massages every so often because I like how it makes me feel. But I don't want you to be dependent on it, right? I take Advil for pain sometimes. I go to the doctor for support, for help, for medications. I do all that, right? It's not either or. What I'm saying is, I don't want you to feel like your healing, your peace, your recovery, your release is dependent on something outside. And that's why the work is so physical, even without me having to actually physically touch you, right? Is I don't want you to become dependent on something outside of you to create this experience, that you know how you can create this physical experience for yourself. And then some days if you need extra help, or some days you just want the, nice feeling of a massage or acupuncture or whatever, that is great. Awesome. Go for it. But I don't want you to feel like it's necessary, that without it, you can't do this. And that's, I think, the biggest light bulb moment that all of my clients experience, is just really personally experience the power of their bodies. Like, wow, I didn't know that I could do this for myself. I didn't know that I could create such good feelings for myself, especially when it's on the backdrop of trauma and grief and mourning and fear. All feels like everything is just out of our control at that point, and it's really not. I mean, some of it is, not all of it is in our control, and that's not the point. The point is there are things in our body that are in our control, and if we listen to our bodies, if we build that safety, our body's going to signal to us when it's time to let go, when it's safe to let go. And when you're ready for it and your body's telling you you're ready for it, and then you allow it to happen, your whole life changes. And it changes without having to experience the trauma and the grief again. It changes in a way where you don't have to feel the pain again. It's gentle and it's safe. It's amazing. And this client that I've been telling you about, really basked in that experience. She really did. She just was so empowered by how she could influence her body on her healing journey. And experiencing this positive part of the healing journey gave her the courage and the motivation to continue healing, right? This is not a one and done thing. It wasn't like, and over, and she was all cured, right? That's not the point, right? But it was exactly what she needed. It was the fuel that she needed to keep working on her healing journey. And a great reminder that, hey, you can feel this way again. You can create these feelings of release and relief. You can feel like your body is emptying. You can feel like your shoulders are lighter. You can feel like you're breathing easier. You can do that on your own Because if you can do it once, you can do it again. It's just a matter of training your body. That's all it is. Crying is a signal. It's not the problem. Crying is a signal about what your body's experiencing. And when you understand how the crying impacts your body, then it clues you in on what's actually going on. And many times it's not a clinical disorder. Your crying is not a symptom of a clinical disorder, but actually a sign of healing. So with all that said, that's not to say everybody who cries is just healing and there's no such thing as postpartum depression or anything like that. Postpartum depression is real. Postpartum PTSD is real. And it really happens to a lot of people. And so how do you know then? Okay, this is a great story about healing and when crying signaled healing. But how do you know if it's postpartum depression? Well, look, I'll be honest with you. There are symptom lists everywhere. There's nothing about symptoms that I'm going to tell you that's any different than something you could Google right now. It'll take you 10 seconds. You'll find lists upon lists of symptom trackers and checklists of if you feel this and this and this and this, it's signs of postpartum depression. That is also prime breeding ground for self-diagnosis. It's called medical student syndrome. We were warned about it in our clinical psychology training as well. Like, I remember a professor of mine was at the beginning of this semester said, do not develop medical student syndrome. You are going to read about all these clinical diagnoses. You're going to think you have every single one of them. You don't. And I remember I can still picture the lecture hall and everything. And I'm thinking, okay, I get it. I don't have bipolar disorder. I don't have schizophrenia. I get it. And then I go to that part of this semester and I'm learning about this disorder and parts of me are going, oh my gosh, do I have a mild form of this? Oh my goodness, maybe I should get treated about it. Somebody should see me. This is a problem. It happens. So what I'm trying to say is it is easy to get caught up in the checklist. It's easy to say, yes, I have all these symptoms. Does it necessarily mean you have postpartum depression or not? I don't know. I can't tell you over a podcast. I can't even diagnose you. You need to be diagnosed by a licensed mental health provider who can actually see you. It can be telemedicine. You can do a therapy session online, but it needs to be with that person or a psychiatrist to diagnose you, right? So that's all there. You have access to all of that. What I will tell you is this. If you really want to know if it's postpartum depression or if there's something really wrong, if the crying is signaling that it's not healing, but something else, whether it's postpartum depression or something else, the way to do that is to pay attention to your body. What is your body telling you? How does it feel? How does it feel in relation to how you normally feel or how you normally remember feeling? What's different? And that will clue you in on what's going on or not. I'll share with you here. There were moments when I was depressed during my fertility journey. Totally. And for me, it shows up in my body like my face feels heavy. Like there's anchors or something just like holding my face down. So it feels really heavy to smile. And it doesn't look any different on the outside. And when I was experiencing bouts of depression through my fertility journey, I wasn't crying a lot. I was just like, everything just felt heavy in my body. And even when I cried, and this is what I was telling my client, right? Even when I cried, it didn't feel like it fixed anything or cleansed anything or released anything. It just felt like I was going deeper in a hole. Or I'd gotten so to the end of my rope where I was backed into a corner that I couldn't do anything else but cry. It did not feel the way she had described it. So pay attention to your body. How does it feel when you're crying? If crying is what, that's what we're talking about today. So, but if there's other symptoms you're concerned about, how does it feel in your body? Where is it showing up? And what words would you use to describe it? Because that's going to be the biggest clue above any checklist out there in the world. That is going to be your biggest clue about whether you need additional support or not. And then you can reach out to a licensed mental health professional, a psychiatrist, and figure out what support you need. Is it diet? Is it exercise? Is it medication? Is it therapy? What is it? The how to fix it is easier to identify when you know what is going on. And when you listen to your body, it's very, very clear what that is. Crying is a signal. It's not a problem in and of itself. It's a signal about what your body's experiencing. And when you understand how the crying impacts your body, that clues you in on what's actually going on. And many times, not always, but many times it's not a clinical disorder, but actually a sign of healing. Thank you so much for joining me here today. And I'm so glad we got to talk about this. It's a small part of the experience, but I think it's an important one, especially as the conversation about postpartum depression is coming up, is, well, what's postpartum healing? What does that look like? And sometimes it looks the same, but actually in our bodies, it feels different. And that's a really important distinction to know. If you enjoyed today's episode, I would love it if you can head over to iTunes and subscribe and leave a review. iTunes is now also called Apple Podcasts. Actually, it's been called that for a long time. I'm just finally catching on to that. But I'd love it if you can head over and subscribe and leave a review so more and more women can tune into Delivering Miracles and join in on this conversation about aspects of fertility and infertility, pregnancy, loss, and parenting and postpartum journeys that not a lot of people are talking about. So please head over there, and even a one-line review and a subscription would be super helpful in helping more and more women know about this podcast. Also, super, super exciting Pregnancy Brain. My book on a mind-body approach to stress management during a high-risk pregnancy is coming out. It's coming out soon, June 25th. So head over to pregnancybrainbook.com to join the waitlist. You'll have early access to pre-sale of the book, which I think is going to be on discount. So you'll get access to that if you join the waitlist. So go over to pregnancybrainbook.com for that. I cannot wait for you to check it out. The endorsements have been amazing. The advanced readers who've had early access to the book have just loved it. And I cannot wait to share it with you. So head over at pregnancybrainbook.com for that. Also, I would love to stay in touch. So follow me on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter, and Pinterest at Parijat Desh for all of them. That's PARIJATDESH. Let your body lead you to understand where you are in your healing process. Don't automatically judge or diagnose your symptoms as good or bad or concerning or not, or trying to label them with anything. That's not important. What's important is what your body's trying to tell you. So listen, pay attention to what's happening and where and when. And that's when you're going to understand what symptoms like crying actually mean. Are they a signal you need more help and support? Or are they a sign that you're on the right track to releasing the trauma, the grief, the guilt, the fear that you've been holding on to? Your body will always tell you. Take it one day, one step at a time. You can do this.